Welcome, my friends, and thanks for joining me today. I'm Lorna Schumann from the Illinois State Museum, and today we're going to talk about cloth and Native or Indigenous people. So cloth is really what our clothes are made out of. It's the woven material that we weave together or piece together to create the clothes that we wear. And we get a lot of our clothing today from either plants or animals, and some of it is what we call synthetic. So that's man-made in a different way. But we're going to step back and really talk about how Indigenous people dressed and the type of clothing that they wore. So when we think of clothing for Native people, we're really thinking of Native people wearing buckskins and animal skins. Well, they did. But so did everybody else in the world also wear that at some point in their own history. For Native people or Indigenous people, they did wear these, but they also had other types of woven cloth. And that's not something we really think about or know about very well. And originally, all cloth, when people first started weaving, no matter where they were in the world, was really rough and scratchy. And it was hard to make, it was hard to get, and sometimes you had to trade it in order to get it. It was woven by hand from many different plant fibers. Well, here at the museum, we actually have an early piece of cloth. This is a picture of the oldest cloth fabric we have in Illinois. And in actually this piece, there's several pieces, like 4 pieces of it, that are a foot long that we found. It's the oldest fabric found in Illinois. It's in the museum's collection, and it comes from about 1150 to 1450 years ago, which is basically 600 to 900 AD. We call it the New Bridge fabric. It's from what we call the Woodland period. That's pre-Cahokia or Mississippian period. And this piece of cloth was carbonized. It was woven, as you can see looking at it, and it was recovered in 1974 during an archaeological site dig in Newbridge. Now here's the thing. We think it is perhaps part of a fringe skirt. The fabric has this late woodland period design in it. Its horizontal elements are made from the inner bark of basswood or willow, while the vertical elements across through here, going up and down, consist of twisted plant fibers. And they really exhibit a simple weave pattern that was used throughout the world. These fabrics were found as pit liners in a clay-lined hearth, probably because it was no longer being used and people wanted to use it again. But it's really unusual to have cloth that long. So finding cloth really that old is rare because cloth is so fragile, it breaks down. How many of you have been wearing any of your cloth? It gets holes and rips real easy. Well, imagine if you left it out for a long time. It falls apart over a period of time. The oldest known outfit ever found in the entire world is a dress that is made of linen, and it was found in Egypt 5,000 years ago. Now, China and India also had early cloth for clothing, as did the people of the Americas, mainly Central America, Northern South America, and Southern North America. So kind of that equilateral area right around the equator area. So think about that, because in the Americas, there were several different types of cloth. There was cotton, which looks like this. This is actual raw cotton, and cotton can be found throughout the entire world. So lots of places had cotton, and it was really common. It's nice and puffy, but what you had to do with cotton is you had to pick it, you had to clean it, and then you had to twist it or twine it into some type of thread called spinning most of the time. But then you also had agave as another type of fabric that you would have used. And agave, you would take the leaves and pound them into fine fibers and then use those fibers and twist the fibers together. And then the other thing is that many people also used tree bark. Here in Illinois, it would have been from the birch tree, the bark of that tree. And it would have been some others, as we saw in the New Bridge fabric that we have. Well, not only were they made out of those materials and other types of plant materials, but you also had wool. Now, this wool is from sheep, which is what we're most common with. For the Americas, many of the early people would have used like llamas and alpacas, but also here in North America, they would have used other animals like bighorn sheep and actually woven their fiber furs together. Even though cotton and agave were grown here in the United States before Europeans ever arrived and were used for clothing, it's really hard to find it up in the northern part of the North Americas, especially up here in Illinois. It's more of a tropical, warm weather type plant. It doesn't do well where there's frost and where there's snow. So it couldn't be grown easily here in Illinois. So even though people did use like birch bark and cotton and agave, the most common type of clothing material found here in Illinois really was animal skins or buckskin, which is really leather. It's kind of funny because today, if we went to the store, you would actually buy and pay a good price for leather. But the problem with leather is while you can design it and make it look really nice, it's not very breathable. If you've ever worn a leather jacket or something, you know it's really hot and it's heavy and it doesn't allow air to flow. So that was some of the clothing that Native people would have had. And they would have traded with the tribes to the south or the nations to the south to have other items like the cotton or the agave. So that's just some of the ways that clothing really was used by many of our indigenous people here in the United States. I hope you learned a little bit more about clothing and cloth and gave you some new things to think about. Well, my friends, thanks for joining me. Take care.